Good evening, visitors, and welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Sharon Bown, and joining us this evening from the Australian Army is Private Anne Collishaw. Today marks the 80th anniversary of the beginning of the Battle of Crete, a key battle of the Second World War. As if to underline the disastrous Greek campaign in April 1941, Crete was something of a tragedy for the British, Commonwealth and Greek forces, as yet another humiliating defeat brought heavy losses and strategic reversal. In a bid to take control of the Eastern Mediterranean, Germany's Operation Mercury saw over 9,500 German airborne troops land on the island of Crete on May the 20th, 1941. Their main objectives were to take the three population centres at Canea, Retimo and Heraklion, and their nearby airfields. Suffering heavy casualties at the hands of the defenders and held at bay at Retimo and Heraklion, by nightfall on the 21st of May, the Germans had gained control of Malim airfield west of Canea. This allowed them to fly in reinforcements and with total air superiority turned the battle decisively in their favour. Seeing the writing on the wall, over the next week the Allies retreated to the island's southern coast, where another evacuation by sea began. Almost half of Crete's 42,000 defenders were saved in this way. The battle for Crete cost the Allies some 23,000 casualties, including more than 4,000 killed. Of the approximately 6,500 Australian troops involved, 274 were killed. More than 500 were wounded and more than 3,000 taken prisoner. Crete was a common starting point for many Australian prisoner of war journeys of escape or endurance and survival. The Germans also suffered severe casualties, despite their dramatic capture of the island, losing almost 6,000 men, especially among their elite airborne troops. The Nazi occupation of Crete lasted until war's end. During the long resistance, many Cretan civilians suffered and died. This evening we will tell the story of Lance Corporal Norman Robert Dann, who lost his life during the Battle of Crete. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria, and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by visitors to the memorial. If you are able, would you please stand and join in singing the national anthem.
Golden soil and
Those requiring a seat, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths and floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Lance Corporal Norman Robert Dann, who was killed during the Second World War. Norman Dann, commonly known by his middle name, Robert, was born in Perth on the 18th of October 1919, the son of George and Sarah Dann. He had 4 brothers, Victor, Claude, Edward and George, and a sister, Elwyn. When Robert was 5 years old, his parents separated and his father later remarried. Dan was a keen cyclist and a member of the Maryland's Amateur Cycling Club. On the 7th of November 1939, shortly after the call for volunteers went out, Dan enlisted in the 2nd Australian Imperial Force. He was taken on strength of the 2nd 11th Battalion, went into training at Ingleburn, and then embarked for overseas service on the 20th of April 1940, arriving in the Egyptian city of Canberra in May. The 2nd 11th Battalion began training at the Australian base in Palestine, where it joined the 19th Brigade. It went into action for the first time at Bardia in January 1941 and then fought at Tobruk as part of the advance into Libya. In April, Dann's battalion was deployed to assist in the defence of Greece. However, the Allies failed to hold back the German forces and began to withdraw. Towards the end of the month, it was evacuated to Crete, where it fought to defend the airfield at Retamo. Along the Greek battalions, the men dug in deep and did their best to fortify their position. On the 20th of May, a concerted German campaign began with the intention of taking the island. Fighter planes strafed the airfield and paratroopers landed with equipment. The battalion held on for 10 days before being forced to surrender, though some managed to escape into the hills. Many men of the 2nd 11th were taken prisoner, and in the confusion, Lance Corporal Dann was presumed to have been one of those. It was later determined that he had died of wounds on the 23rd of May, 1941. He was 21 years old. Today, Dann remains lie at the Souda Bay War Cemetery under the inscription, "A proud and loving tribute to Bob, we will always remember." Robert Dann was dearly missed by his family and friends, who placed in memoriam notices in the newspapers for years after his death. In 1941, the riders in a Perth amateur cycling race honoured him by donning black armbands in his memory. Robert's brothers served in the Second World War, Victor in the Royal Australian Navy, Claude and Eddie in the Army, and George in the Royal Australian Air Force. George Dann was killed during an operation over Lille, Germany, while serving with No. 463 Squadron in the RAAF. The others returned home safely. Lance Corporal Robert Dann's name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my left, among almost 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the Pool of Reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Lance Corporal Norman Robert Dann, who died for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Poziere or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. We thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and we wish you all a very good evening. Thank you.